Imagine this: New York City, 1850s. You're a working man, a dock worker, a factory hand, a street vendor, and you've been on your feet since before sunrise. You need to use the restroom. The problem? There isn't one. Not nearby, not publicly accessible, not for someone like you. Wealthy people have private facilities in their homes and clubs. But out here, on the street, in the markets, at the docks, you have two options. Find a dark alley and hope nobody notices, or hold it until you get home, which might be hours away. This is the daily life for millions of people in every major city in the world. And nobody in power is particularly rushing to fix it, because the people suffering from the problem aren't the people making the decisions. Then, cities start getting bigger, faster, more crowded. Train stations handling tens of thousands of passengers every day. Factories with hundreds of workers on a single floor. Department stores with thousands of customers at a time. And then, the alley solution stops working. City planners, architects, and engineers start asking a question that seems almost embarrassingly basic. Where are all these people supposed to go? The answer they come up with changed public life forever. Believe it or not, the invention of the public urinal is one of the most consequential design decisions in the history of cities. And the story of how it happened is stranger and more fascinating than you'd ever expect. Welcome to Believe It or Not, the show where weird is real and the truth is stranger than fiction. I'm your host, Bryan, and today's story is about a very human problem, a surprisingly elegant solution, and the invention that made modern cities actually function. This is the strange, surprisingly fascinating, and occasionally awkward history of the urinal, and why the world would be a very different place without it. Public sanitation has been a problem for as long as people have lived in large groups together. The ancient Romans actually had public latrines, which were long stone benches with holes cut in them, running water beneath, open to anyone who needed them. Oddly enough, they were social spaces. People sat next to each other and had conversations. By Roman standards, it was a perfectly civilized arrangement. Then, Rome fell, and so did most of its plumbing. For the next 1,000+ years, European cities handled human waste in ways that ranged from primitive to catastrophic. Chamber pots emptied from windows, cesspits dug beneath houses, rivers used as open sewers. As cities grew during the Industrial Revolution, London going from 1 million people to 2 million people in 50 years, New York exploding from 60,000 to over 800,000. The scale of the problem became impossible to ignore. The invention of the flush toilet in the mid-1800s helped enormously, but it created a new problem almost immediately. You see, flush toilets required full enclosures, doors, locks, plumbing connections, ventilation. They took up significant space and significant time. A single person could occupy a cubicle for several minutes. In a busy train station or factory, the math didn't work. You simply couldn't build enough enclosed flush toilets to serve the volume of people who needed them. Something faster was needed. Something that took up less space, required less time, and could handle far greater numbers of people moving through quickly. The wall-mounted urinal as we know it today emerged in the mid to late 1800s. developed through a combination of engineering logic and practical necessity, rather than any single dramatic invention moment. The core insight was almost brutally simple: eliminate everything that wasn't strictly necessary. No enclosure, no door, no seat, no lock. A wall-mounted porcelain fixture connected to the plumbing, angled for efficient drainage. A person could step up, use it in under 30 seconds, and be gone. The space savings were dramatic. Where a row of enclosed toilet cubicles might serve 10 people at a time in a given floor area, the same space fitted with urinals could serve 3 or 4 times that number. In a busy Victorian train station handling thousands of passengers an hour, that difference was enormous. Early urinals appeared in train stations, factories, and public parks across Britain, France, and the United States throughout the second half of the 1800s. Now, Paris became particularly famous for its elaborate cast iron street urinals called Vespiniens, which were installed throughout the city beginning in the 1830s and became such a distinctive feature of Parisian street life that tourists photographed them as curiosities. The design worked so immediately and so completely that it barely needed refining, which is, again, the highest compliment you can pay to an invention. Here's the part of the urinal's design history that most people never think about, and that makes the whole thing surprisingly clever. Drainage angle. The interior surface of a urinal isn't flat. It's carefully curved and angled to direct liquid immediately downward and away, minimizing splashback and maximizing hygiene, with a passive design that requires no moving parts and no user effort. Early designers discovered through fairly unpleasant trial and error that getting this angle slightly wrong produced results that defeated the entire purpose of the fixture. The physics of the thing, fluid dynamics, surface tension, angle of impact, had to be worked out carefully before the design stabilized into something that functioned reliably. Victorian engineers spent serious professional time thinking very carefully about this. And because they got it right, you've never had to think about it once. They worked hard and toiled over a dirty and disgusting problem so that you'd never have to again. Believe it or not. Here's what I find genuinely remarkable about this story. The urinal is, objectively, one of the least glamorous inventions in human history. Nobody writes poems about it. Nobody hangs it in a museum. It doesn't get a chapter in most history books. And yet, it solved a problem that affected every single person who lived in a city. And it solved it so completely that, within a generation, the problem essentially disappeared from public consciousness. The suffering it prevented became invisible. The daily indignity it eliminated, millions of people with nowhere to go and cities that couldn't be bothered to provide for them, simply stopped being a part of urban life. And I think that's an extraordinary achievement. It just doesn't look like one from the outside. The most successful solutions have that quality. They make problems disappear so thoroughly that future generations can barely imagine those problems existed. And the people who built those solutions get very little credit because the evidence of what they fixed is gone. The best design is always the design you never have to think about. Now, here are a few believe it or not facts I found while researching the podcast. Believe it or not, Paris installed elaborate cast iron urinals called Vespiniens throughout the city in the 1830s, and they were so distinctive that tourists photographed them as Parisian landmarks. They became as associated with the city as the cafes and the boulevards. At their peak, there were over 1,200 of them across Paris. The last one was removed in 1980. But today, Paris has brought them back in a modern version. A bright red open-air street urinal called the trottoir. And predictably, Parisians are arguing about it. Believe it or not, the word urinal dates back to the 14th century. But it didn't originally refer to a fixture at all. It referred to a glass vessel used by medieval doctors to examine patients' urine for diagnosis. For hundreds of years, if you said urinal to a doctor, they pictured a flask, not a bathroom fixture. However, the word slowly shifted in meaning as the fixture became common. One of the stranger vocabulary migrations in the English language. Believe it or not, Marcel Duchamp, one of the most famous artists of the 20th century, submitted a standard factory urinal to an art exhibition in 1917, titled it Fountain, signed it with a fake name, and entered it as an original artwork. The exhibition committee rejected it, but it is now considered one of the most influential artworks of the modern era, and has been voted the most influential artwork of the 20th century by a poll of 500 art world figures. A bathroom fixture, the most influential artwork of the 20th century? Believe it or not. Believe it or not, modern waterless urinals, which use no water at all and rely on a special liquid trap to block odors, save up to 40,000 gallons of water per fixture per year. A major stadium fitted entirely with waterless urinals can save tens of millions of gallons of water annually. The Victorian engineers who struggled to connect their fixtures to adequate plumbing would find it almost unbelievable that the solution eventually involved removing the water entirely. Believe it or not, the fly in the urinal is real, and it works. In the 1990s, Amsterdam's Schiphol Airport etched a small image of a housefly near the drain of each urinal in the men's restrooms. The idea was that men would aim at the fly, dramatically improving accuracy and reducing cleaning costs. It works so well, reducing spillage by 80%, that airports, stadiums, and offices around the world adopted the same trick. The entire field of nudge theory in behavioral economics, that's the idea that subtle environmental cues can change human behavior without rules or incentives, traces part of its origin to a picture of a fly in a Dutch airport bathroom. And finally, believe it or not, the first public pay toilets in Britain charged 1 penny per use, which is the origin of the British phrase, spend a penny, meaning to use the restroom. The phrase is still in common use in Britain today, over 150 years later. Every time someone says it, they're unknowingly quoting the exact price of Victorian public sanitation. 1 penny, in a country that has since switched to decimal currency, and where a penny buys almost nothing. The phrase outlasted the price, the coin, and the toilets that inspired it. Now let's see how much you were paying attention. I'll ask the question, you shout out the answer. Are you ready? Then let's get started. Question 1. What was the main design advantage of the urinal over the enclosed flush toilet in busy public places? The answer? It required no enclosure, no door, and no lock, meaning it took up far less space and could serve 3 to 4 times as many people in the same area, in a fraction of the time. Question 2. What is the Schiphol Airport fly? And why did it work so well? The answer? It's a small image of a fly etched near the drain of each urinal, giving men something to aim at. It reduced spillage by over 80% and inspired an entire field of behavioral science called nudge theory. And finally, question number 3. True or false? Marcel Duchamp's famous artwork, Fountain, was a painting inspired by a urinal. That's definitely false. It was an actual urinal, a standard factory model he bought, signed with a fake name, and submitted to an art exhibition. While it was rejected at the time, it is now considered the most influential artwork of the 20th century. Believe it or not. Now here's the big question of the podcast. The urinal solved a problem that affected millions of people every single day, and it solved it so completely that within a generation, nobody thought about the problem anymore. So here's the question. What problem exists in your world right now that's so normal, so daily, so just the way things are, that nobody is seriously trying to fix them? And what would it take for someone to look at one of those problems and say, actually, there's a better way? If you're enjoying Believe It or Not, follow or subscribe wherever you listen. And share this episode with someone who has never once thought about the design of a bathroom fixture, which before today was almost certainly you. Next time on Believe It or Not, it's March 2011. A massive earthquake strikes off the coast of Japan, triggering one of the most powerful tsunamis in recorded history. In a small coastal town, an 83-year-old woman is taking her Shih Tzu for a morning walk. His name is Babu. And that morning, Babu does something he has never done in his life. He refuses to go the usual way. He pulls, he resists, he turns around and drags his owner up a hill. Away from the ocean, away from everything familiar. And he will not stop. And he will not explain himself because he's a dog. His owner doesn't understand. Until the waves come. The true story of Babu and what he knew that his owner couldn't. You won't want to miss it. But before we go, here's a little toilet bowl humor. Why can't you hear a pterodactyl go to the bathroom? Because the P is silent. Until next time, keep wondering, keep learning, and remember, sometimes the truth is weirder than fiction.